Well, hi everyone. I'm Meredith Hartley again. I was asked to speak on quality and the generation gap, which I think is a little bit of a misnomer, and I'll get into that. But let me tell you a little bit about how I got into quality to begin with. It's not just because Frank is my father. I managed my first project when I was 13. I went to a middle school, I was in the drama club, and they canceled our spring production. And all of us got really mad about it. And we went to the administration and said, we want to do the show. If the teacher doesn't want to direct it, then one of us will direct it. Please just give us a space to rehearse and we'll do our show. And they said, nope, sorry, you can't do that. We won't let you. And I said, yeah, right, you won't let us. We all got really angry and decided to do it ourselves. There are about 40 of us. And they said, well, what are we going to do? Who's going to direct it? And being cockeyed and naive, I said, I'll direct it. It can't be that hard. We found a teacher who's willing to let us use their classroom, and we found a script. We did much ado about nothing because the script was free and there was a movie we could watch. So we wouldn't have to pay anything and we could figure out what was going on. And we spent 2 months rehearsing our tails off every day after school. And when we couldn't find a performance space, we went around to local churches and we pretty much harassed them until one of them agreed to give us their fellowship hall for one night. And we put on a show. And not only did we put on a show, we ended up making about $100 off of it, which in middle school money is epic. We ended up taking $100 and handing it over to the church that let us use their hall. But over the course of the next 5 years, I directed or managed 36 theater productions, groups ranging from 5 people all the way up to well over 100. Teams of, at least 12 teams per production, because you have a crew for the set, you have a crew for the props. And let me tell you, you want to learn about team management? Run a theater for a while. You would not believe how much of it interacts, how many things you're shaking your head. You've been there. She was a theater major. Everything is dependent on each other. You can't hang that light until you know what color the set is going to be, until you know exactly how tall it's going to be. And if the set is slightly off from where it's supposed to be, it takes half an hour to get up there, rehang that light, confirm where it's supposed to be. Everything has to mesh together. You have to solve problems together, and you have to understand how all these different systems click together. So I spent 5 years doing that. And I used to come home every night and complain to my parents about what some idiot had done during rehearsal. And they give me advice. And this went on for a few years. And finally, by the time it was my senior year, we were very lucky. Our theater director was kind of unique in that we didn't have parents building our sets. He was the director, but everything else was done by students. We headed the crews, we ran the production meetings, we did everything ourselves. And by my senior year, he handed it over to me. And he said, I'm not even directing. You do it, Meredith. Again, no pressure. So my senior year, here I was in charge of this huge production all on my own, start to finish, and we did it. Yet again, we did it. And I came home to my dad mid-rehearsal after a particularly rough run, and he was giving me advice, and I stopped and I said, Dad, how do you know all this stuff? Did you just deal with a lot of idiots? And he said, yes. Yes, he had. But he told me about this thing called quality, which I'd heard him talking about, but quality was a word. I knew what quality meant. I didn't really know what quality meant. And I said, well, then how can I learn this? And he said, well, here, just give me a few days. And he told me about this thing called a CQIA, Certified Quality Improvement Associate. And he said, you already know this stuff. It's just learning the words. You already know all these principles. It won't be that hard for you to learn this. Come on, come to the class. So I ended up attending the CQIA prep class. And then I locked myself in a room at the local university library and I studied like crazy for 2 weeks solid after school every day, going and studying until the exam. And I walked in with a whole bunch of people who had about 30, 40 years on me, and I took the exam and I passed. Before that, one of the things that held me back at first is I read the certification requirements. It said you needed 5 years experience in management. And I said, I don't have that. And he said, yes, you do. You've been managing teams for 5 years. And I said, no, I've been doing theater with teenagers. That's not managing a team. And he said, why don't you just call ASQ and find out? So I picked up the phone and I called ASQ and I explained what I'd been doing for 5 years. And they said, yeah, that counts. So I knew that I could do it. I never would have done it otherwise, okay? That's how I got into quality. About a year later, after my freshman year of college, I was invited out to ASQ headquarters in Milwaukee to help with the CQIA exam review. Bring a whole bunch of people in, we sit down, we go over all the test questions, what the response correct rates were, and we figure out if there are problems we can solve with it. It was fascinating. I loved it. It was a geek paradise for me. And while I was there, a couple of to be remaining unnamed higher ups at ASQ said, hey, we're having some trouble with our student education wing. We're getting attrition. I think we really need some new blood. Can you come and talk, and we'd like to get you involved? And I said, sure. And I came in to talk with them because back then I was a theater major. That changed. But I came in, and the thing is, over the year that I'd been in theater in college, everyone I talked to was interested in this quality stuff I was talking about because they knew that it would help their lives be easier. They understood processes, they understood interaction, they wanted to know more. So I suggested, hey, we've got a group right here that's really interested. Why don't we focus on quality for laymen? Let's see if we can adapt this and get some of the jargon out, and let's focus on all of these other people. My friend who was running, she was a horticulture major and she was running her own business. She wanted to know about it. I had friends starting a computer company and they wanted to know about it. And I talked to them about it, and they said, yeah, no, that's not really what we were thinking about. Here's some material we have. Can we just kind of jazz up the language to make it more appealing to young people? And I said, well, yeah, we could do that, but I don't think that's actually going to solve the problem. I think what we need to do is look beyond the jargon. And we went back and forth for a couple of weeks until finally we mutually agreed that, you know what, I have other things to work on, and maybe I'm not the right person to help with this project. We kind of parted ways at that point. Unfortunately, that problem of attrition, of losing young folk, of losing people in general, has been escalating. That was 10 years ago that I did that. That was in 2003. It's 2013, and ASQ is considered an aging organization. Does anyone know what that means? Give me a guess, give me a gander. I'm seeing nods and shakes. And no, seriously, talk to me. What does that mean? You're aging. What does that mean?
The average membership age is moving up.
Okay. Why is that a problem?
You're not as active as you once were. You're also not as...
Not bringing in new future members.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably retiring more people than you're bringing in.
Mm-hmm. Which means all of the knowledge, all of the decades of experience that's sitting in this room, that's sitting everywhere else, isn't getting passed on. And that's the real problem with aging. It's not just about the actual age of people who are going up. When we talk about aging, what we really mean is that you're not attracting new members, that you're not innovating or aware of the innovations that are happening around you, because there's some barrier between you and the people who are doing it. So you slowly start to feel like you're losing relevance. You're struggling to bring in those new members, even though you know that they're doing what you're doing and they could be helped by what you're doing. It also means you have decreased activity, like you said, but mostly it means increased insularity. It always goes back to that you are increasingly insular for some reason. And combating aging has nothing to do with just bringing in younger blood and new fresh meat. It has everything to do with understanding why that insularity is occurring and how to break it down. Now, one of the things I've noticed over the last 10 years as I've been watching the quality world and working in it as a quasi-outsider, because I'm a quality professional who got my roots in theater, has majored in Asian studies, speaks Thai, and has jumped all over the world, and I mean, I had a fellowship in financial counseling. I'm not a traditional quality professional in that sense. There's this idea that where quality built up, it was in large corporations. It's usually white-collar jobs. And I come from a very diverse quality background. But as I've been watching quality and going to these meetings, I found a universal problem that started when I saw it back in 2003, when I went to ASQ headquarters. The material they were giving me to look at was all about quality tools. And it was about, here's this tool, and here's what it does, and here's how to use it, and here's this tool, and here's what it does, and here's how to use it. Now, we were talking earlier about college curriculums, and how much quality is there in the current quality curriculum, or college curriculums. I mean, you said you took one class, right? It was the only one they offered. That's it. So part of the disconnect is that they were pushing tools, but tools aren't the first step of quality. They're not what's going to convert someone over to quality and help them understand it. You need a baseline. You need to understand the quality world before you can jump into using those tools. Especially in the modern age when most people have an antagonistic relationship with math. You'll find that most people get a little freaked out when you put a chart in front of them. Their eyes cross. It's like reading Sanskrit, and that feeling you got in physics or in math class before a test starts going in your heart and pounding. And that's why we've got to recognize in this area, this is an epically quality-filled area. There are so many people doing quality in the Spokane area. You can't go 2 feet without tripping over someone. But we also have a lot of people who've been burned by quality. I've met people in the Spokane area over and over again who talk about how, oh yeah, quality, we've done that before. It's just a euphemism for firing people. And we've all heard that from other situations where you can't use the word lean or TQM because someone got burned. Someone said, we're going to do this cool new program, it's going to help us. And they never really told them how it would help. And it only resulted in things getting worse. So we have to recognize that we're using loaded language, that people have scars, and that there are skeletons that we could be tripping over everywhere we go. I wanted to find what that gap is. When I talk about the gap, it's pretty specific. When I say that there is a gap, it is the barrier that separates those who are interested in or using the principles of quality. I'm talking continuous improvement, efficiency, respect for people, all of that, from professional quality organizations. Because we're not the only ones doing quality, we know that. But we're not bringing those people in. There's something that's keeping them from being attracted to us. So what does it look like? I told you about theater, what that was. I'm going to tell you about 2 of my clients in the local area that are doing the best quality I've seen in a decade. Okay? One of them is called Thin Technologies. Has anyone heard of it? It's a local company. It's only been around for about 3 years. Started by a fellow named Nick Brown and his wife Katie. Nick never graduated from college, son of a Marine, used to be a firefighter. He's also a tech prodigy. He can learn just about any software system you throw at him, and he can learn it quickly. And about 3 years ago, he noticed a problem, that these major software firms, VMware, Cisco, that they were implementing new technology. But it's risky to train people in a new technology. It takes time to get them up there, it takes money, and you never know if that technology is really going to work. It's changing rapidly, there are lots of bugs. And he said, I can learn things quickly, and I can teach other people to learn things quickly. And he recognized another problem, that a lot of people in the tech industry have trouble talking to non-techies. It's a pretty endemic problem. He recognized that, and he said, I know how to fix that. So he started taking novices, tech industry outsiders, and training them to learn cutting-edge technology, the brand new releases of software, and implement them for huge users. We're talking major multinational corporations and clients. So they refer to themselves as the bat phone or the red phone. Someone has an urgent problem, a new technology, they can pick up the phone and call them. The really revolutionary thing about what they're doing is their training program. Because in only 3 years, they've reached $1 million per year in revenue. They're going quick and they're going fast and they're going with very few defects and they're training novices. So I was sitting with my client, I was asking them, how do you do this? And their training system is brilliant because they're not just training them in code, they're training them how to think. That whole idea of getting everyone involved in the revolution and in the change, that's what they do. They bring in these novices and they put them in a lab to start doing exercises and learning the code. And once they get to the point that they feel like they're getting that code down, he gives them a project to work on. Not for a client, just something that he has come up with that he wants them to do, and they start on it. And at night he comes in and he breaks whatever they're doing. So they show up the next morning and it's not the way they left it. So they have to figure out what happened, figure out what the problem is, fix it, and then keep going. And he'll do this over and over again. Because he's not training them to walk into a perfect environment. He knows that if you're instituting or implementing a new program for a major corporation with offices all over in a major IT department, that you're going to do your work for 8 hours a day, come back the next morning, and something will be a mess. So he's training people to think, to find those problems. And then when they come back, they have these group sessions where they discuss the lessons learned, they all talk to each other, they refer, they bounce back and forth, and you work through this apprentice program where you learn how to do these projects. You still have all the social skills you need to talk with these non-techies, and you share your lessons learned, and it's documented, and it keeps rolling like that, which is why they're able to take a brand new release and be fully competent on it in less than 2 weeks. If someone calls and says, here's a new program, can you learn it? They'll say, of course we can. Bring it in. And they keep rolling forward like that. I've never seen a better training program in my life. Now, when I was talking with them, I'm sitting here going, I didn't know you guys were doing quality. That's amazing. And he said, what? Yeah, we provide quality work. I said, no, but you're doing quality. And I realized that if you say the word Kaizen to Nick, he's going to say, I don't like sushi. I mean, he doesn't know what those terms are, but he's doing better quality than anyone I've ever seen. When you walk in there, it is, I mean, he could show Lean a thing or two, and it's brilliant, it's quality. But when you ask him about certifications, he says, I don't have time for certifications, I don't need certifications. We're doing good enough, we're profitable, that's what matters. What I need is I need to know how to do things faster, I'm running out of time, I need to know that. I'm like, we can help with that, but you bring up quality, and he doesn't know what you're talking about. The second example, I should add that Nick is only 30. Okay, so we're dealing here again with the younger generation. Second example is actually right across the street. Anyone know Love at First Bite Cupcakes right across the way? They've been open for less than 2 years. The owner is a woman named Monica. She's an immigrant from Colombia. She learned how to bake cupcakes sitting there with her abuelita, cooking in kitchens in Colombia. And she came here, she's been here for about 20 years, and she makes the most mouth-watering, amazing cupcakes you will ever taste. They are fantastic. In her first year of operation, she went from nothing to being voted Creme 2's #1 dessert. She started with very little debt. 2 years later, she's debt-free and she's profitable. I mean, she's there. She's taking it and reinvesting in the business, and she runs the leanest operation I've ever seen. There is no waste in her organization. I've looked for it. I could only make 2 changes to her morning routine for baking, and that involved how she put the cupcakes in the display case and how she wrote the names on a board. That was it. She streamlined her supply chain so that she can make the maximum number of cupcake flavors from the least amount of ingredients. So she makes very basic bases. The night before, her assistant puts them together. She mixes it up first thing in the morning. She takes these very simple bases and whatever ingredients are locally available, maximizes flavors. So she's producing in a 2-man shop about 16 to 18 flavors a day. And she puts those out. She's never thrown a cupcake away, ever, in all of her time of operation. Even if she's not selling out, she does one of 2 things. She boxes them up and she takes them to local businesses as free advertising. Hi, my name's Monica, just wanted to introduce myself. Here are some cupcakes, enjoy. Or she takes them, she mashes them up, and she makes cake pops, which are those little cakes on a stick that are covered in chocolate, which are hugely popular. She can sell them dirt cheap or give them away for free, and it's great marketing. Everyone loves it. She never throws anything away, ever. She could teach Toyota a thing or 2 about supply chains. I mean, she gets it. And if you say quality to her again, she goes, I make good quality cupcakes. Yes, of course they're great. And I say, no, quality. And as you start talking about the principles, both Nick and Monica get excited. They're like, I didn't know other people were doing what I was doing. But they're never going to show their face at an ASQ meeting, at least not the way we're currently doing things, and not the way that they currently understand things. But they're doing better quality than anything I've ever seen. They understand the principles better. And we know that you need to know the principles solidly before you can really implement those tools. Otherwise, you're putting the cart before the horse. Any questions? Any of that? Okay. This is what the gap is. That's what the gap looks like. And the question goes back to why. And if you go back to my definition of the gap, I didn't say it was people who were using quality tools and weren't coming here. It's people who are using or are interested in the principles of quality. But there's something that's separating them. It's a space that keeps them from coming and talking with us and being with us and sharing what they've learned, and us learning from them and them learning from us, and being a part of that change in Spokane and becoming a unified quality community instead of being fragmented. I want to define what I view as the difference between tools and principles, and what I've heard from people as they tell me what their bad experiences were with quality. The way I break it down, a tool is specific, it's technical, it's usually going to require special training to use. Like, you're not just going to be able to look at a chart and immediately know what it's telling you. You have to know how to read the chart properly. You have to know what the name of that chart is. That requires special training. You have to be an insider to use that tool, okay? But a principle is the complete opposite, because it is universal. It's usually going to be it can be expressed without using any jargon, meaning you don't need to use a technical term to get someone to understand what you're talking about. They don't need any special training to understand the common sense principle that you're talking about. It's usually not limited to an industry or field, which is what I mean by universal. It can go anywhere. Anyone can implement it, whether you're dealing with software or cupcakes or welding or anything. It's universal. And it's going to be a concept or principle of human behavior. It's going to explain how people think, why they do what they do, how to get them to do things better. That's going to be the difference. And mostly all quality is a collection of those principles. The tools are just how we express that. It's what we use to support us doing that and communicate among each other about the quality principles we're doing. They make life easier, but they're not the quality principles everything is based on. So pop quiz. Well, before that, I guess I can illustrate it by saying, when we overemphasize the tools, it's kind of like showing people a spatula and expecting them to get really excited about cooking. if you know what you can do with a blender, with a food processor. I have a friend who went to culinary school, and she sees a knife and she gets giddy and excited, like, do you know what this knife is? I can do this with it, and it's amazing, and it does all these wonderful things. I'm like, it's a cool knife. I get you're excited, but it's a cool knife. She knows what it'll do in her kitchen. She knows what she can make with it. She gets excited about it. But you show it to me outside her industry, and I go, that's nice. I mean, I get you're excited. It's a cool knife, but I don't understand why it's useful. I believe it is, but I don't understand. And I don't have time to figure it out, honey. I'm good with the knives I have. It fits my need. So the pop quiz is, what is our most powerful quality tool? What do you think? What's the most valuable tool we've got in quality?
I'm gonna spitball this. People.
People. Yes.
Experience, knowledge,
Experience.
information.
Okay. What's going to tie all three of those together? Okay, I could explain it to you, but I think it's a little more effective if I demonstrate it to you. So listen closely. Okay, I'm going to give you a demonstration to illustrate what our most important tool is. Okay. Wani chan jeputgap geogap kwansukapapka.
Communication.
Wela rao put geogap kwansukapap gap konti mai tangan gap kwansukapap dobai. Konanen kitwa tamai chanrian kwamsukapapka kwamsukapap de chui chan yanai. Mai ni wela tirian kwamsukapabla la kitwa mai chui chanlai. Krai kajai ti chan geogapka. Kun kajai? Kajai di makala kun dobai chan. Katol kun doklong gap chan ka. Chai kun ka. Krai kun mai kajai.
Common communication.
Why didn't you understand what I was talking about? Communication. Language is our most powerful tool. Now, why did he understand what I was saying?
Because he had the same language.
Aha, we both speak Thai. We both went through a year of immersion training to learn how to speak Thai. So we understand what the other person was saying. You could get my tone, kinda, I'm assuming, maybe. Yeah. You had no clue what I was talking about, okay? This is what we sound like to the other people who are doing quality. They're doing quality, but they don't understand those words. And they get that it's interesting, but it's that language that is the barrier between us. The languages of quality are extremely valuable. They were designed to help big corporations, Toyota, Mitsubishi, I mean, you name it. These big companies created their quality languages to make it easy for people to talk over multiple locations and massive projects. It made life easier for them. But they're all just languages. TQM, Six Sigma, all they are different ways of expressing the same principles. They'll use different tools, they use different words, but they're not significantly different. Other than we need to use the right tool for the right job, and that includes the language that we use. So if you had to define quality, I mean big Q quality, not quality as fitness for use, but the field of quality, I mean the American Society for Quality. Someone said, great, what does the American Society for Quality promote? How would you answer?
A business system.
A business system, okay. I can go get a business system from a dude who sells infomercials at 2 a.m. So what do you promote?
Doing things right the first time.
Doing things right the first time, okay. What else? What is quality? Yes.
A philosophy
A philosophy about what?
about how things work and how things don't work.
Okay, so how's it going to make my life easier? Why should I show up? Why should I learn all this stuff?
Because it's profitable.
It's profitable. Hey, I like the sound of that. We're getting there. What I've discovered over the last 10 years is, especially in an area like Spokane, where there's trauma from quality, and where when you look at the people who, I run into who are doing quality, none of them have college degrees. In fact, a lot of business owners these days don't. Very few of us are going, especially my generation, are going to go to school, get a degree, and go to work for Northrop Grumman or Boeing or Raytheon. Even most of us aren't going to go work for Google. Most of us are going to stay local. We're going to work for small companies. We're going to work for startups. We're going to start our own businesses. That's where we're going to be. So when I tell people about quality, The answer I found that really works is I tell them that quality is the science of how smart people screw up perfectly good businesses and how to keep them from doing it. And everyone sits there and they go, I know what that is. Wait, you know how to do that? Wait, there's a way to do that? And then you can tell them about the last few centuries of people passing on their wisdom, of people like Ford, Deming, going all the way back to Eli Whitney, for Pete's sakes, and the cotton gin. You can go all the way back and say, this is how they've passed on the collective knowledge. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can learn these universal principles and we can share them with each other. So everything you're doing, you're already doing quality. This just helps you fit it into a system so you know where you fit, you know how to do it better, and you may learn some tools that you didn't know existed. And suddenly light bulbs start going on because most people want to do better with their business, their job. I found a lot of interest from people who are looking for internships, because if you get an internship, you're going into a company hoping you eventually get a job, you're hoping for good reviews, and you want to impress people. So when I explain that quality will help you figure out where a problem is and how to solve it. It'll help you know if you're doing the right thing or if you're just jumping off the gun, which will help you impress your supervisor at this internship. They go, I like the sound of that. Let's do that. And suddenly they're interested in quality. A certification is not a motivator for most people these days because a certification isn't going to help you bring in the profit, like you said. It's not going to tell people that you can actually, most people, I mean, I talked with an actress once who went to a special program at Cambridge, and everyone around her was going, that's amazing, what was it like being at Cambridge? Does it really help you in auditions? And she said, no. You walk into an audition and they say, that's nice, you went to Cambridge, show me what you can do, solve my problem, I have a need and I need you to fill it. Please be the person who can fill it. That's what people want from quality, is they want information, they want knowledge. Most of us don't have time to get a certification. Now you may, if your company is requiring it, or if you're thinking ahead for a job transition and you know your industry is going to need it. But one of the reasons that we're alienating so many people who are doing quality is because we usually lead with the, well, here's this cool certification we have. And that's what a lot of, especially ASQ's education has been focused on, is those certifications. That's not a motivating factor for most people. And the certifications are usually pretty high on the jargon. What people want are the principles. They want to know, how can you help me now? Now, I'm not saying we need to throw out our quality terms, okay? They're valuable, they are necessary. We just need to make sure we're using the right tool for the right job. So, sitting right here talking about ISO, we know what that is. We can all discuss that just fine here in this room. Now, you probably had no clue what we were talking about, and did you know what we were talking about? Okay, she knew what she was talking about. She has an MBA. She knew what we were talking about. Did you know what we were talking about? Yes. Okay. He didn't. He's an outsider. But, like he said earlier, he grew up with quality principles. His dad did management. If I start talking to my husband about quality, then I can stop, I can explain in layman's terms, and he goes, oh, I get that. I know what that is now. I understand why that's important. That's all that stands between us and bringing more people in, is using our language appropriately. Think of it kind of like, it's like the Vatican, okay? The Vatican has more than 4,000 people, okay? The official language of the Vatican is Latin, for a reason. It lets all these people from all over the world communicate with a single language. But in my college town, the local parish priest, he could do mass in Latin, in English, and in Spanish to meet the needs of his congregation. Because, I mean, it makes sense to speak quality all the time when we're at ASQ headquarters or at the regional meeting, but when we're talking to the rest of the world, we need to be like that parish priest. We need to speak multiple languages when it comes to quality. And it's really easy for us to get sucked into using the language over and over again and saying, well, it's quality and it's this and it's continuous improvement, and well, what does continuous improvement really mean? And you break that down, you explain that to people by not just saying this is the definition, like quality is fitness for use, or continuous improvement means blah, 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 blah. You want to tell them, this is what it is. This is how it's going to make your life easier, faster, better, cheaper. And here's how you find out more. Maybe here's an example where you've seen it before. That's what you need to tell them. That's how we're going to communicate with people and bring them in and help them understand and break down that gap and that barrier. Because there's really no difference between, I said before that the generation gap is a misnomer, and it is, because there's very little difference between someone who's older and younger. You're just in a different industry. You just had different experiences, usually. That's all it chalks up to. Well, I guarantee you, I've had different experiences than Jeff has, and definitely different experiences than Frank has, or Kathy has, or Paul has. I mean, we've all had different experiences. We can still sit here together and communicate about them. We just have to figure out what each person's frame of reference is. It's the exact same thing talking across generations. So forget all of the random stuff you've heard about how the older generation values this and the younger generation values that. All they're doing is expressing the same universal values in different language or in different ways. Everyone wants to do better in their jobs. Everyone wants to do it faster, better, cheaper. We just have to communicate about it in a way we can all understand. As far as my experience, 3 things really broke down the barriers for me. One is that someone recognized my passion and my need for answers. Despite my non-traditional field, there were several people who recognized that I wanted to know more, that I had a need to know more, and they said, hey, I'll tell you more. This will help you. So they didn't let field or lack of traditional quality, manufacturing, engineering, management, they didn't let that stop them from seeing that I had a need that quality could fill. The second is that those people recognized the universality of quality. They recognized that it was more than just the tools, it was more than the jargon, that it was a language, and that the principles could be universal. And they explained it that way, so that even at 18, I could look at my life and say, oh, that makes sense. Now at the time, I was stressed out, I wasn't getting the best grades in math, so if you led with a chart, I would have cried and said, I'm sorry, I get enough of this at school, I'm done, I'm so done, that chart is not going to make my life easier. But the principles made my life easier. And as I learned the principles, I fell in love with the tools. That's the trick, is I had to know what was in it. And once I understood that the chart actually was expressing something that made my life easier and it would make things even easier on top of that, I was hooked. The third one is that they sponsored me and they encouraged me. They invited me to come. They talked about it with me. They were upfront about what it would take to pass the examination. But when we're talking about sponsoring people without certifications, we're talking about bringing them in, listening to them, sharing with them, also making our meetings a place that are friendly for non-jargon novices. Not novices in doing good work and executing quality principles, but novices in the language. Okay? The first time that I walked into my Thai classroom, the instructors just started talking in Thai. They didn't stop for an hour. An entire hour. I went home that night after 8 hours of that, where they spoke English a few times, but my head hurt. I was exhausted. I remember turning to my husband and saying, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. Can I duck out now? I don't want to go back. My head hurts. We don't want our meetings to feel like that for other people. If we really want to bring in new members, if we want to bring in the diverse group of people that are doing quality here in Spokane, from the local hospital to the cupcake shop, then we need to make sure our meetings are friendly for them, that we catch ourselves when we're using that jargon, that we make sure that they know and understand what we're talking about. I've been to a lot of quality meetings for organizations over the last 10 years, and almost always they're about using this worksheet. They're about this particular term. Let's all discuss how we've executed this term in our lives. And because there's so much jargon, people who have a lot of experience feel like they can't share. They feel like they're novices and they devalue their own experience. And they've got valuable experience. We were just talking with the head of quality nurse over at Valley Hospital, who walked into this job just a couple of years ago with no experience in quality. But they have upped their quality game. They're getting closer and closer to each sigma. They're moving progressively forward. And she's learned how to do that. She has experience with taking a staff of hundreds and motivating them on that change and resolving conflict and moving them forward. That is experience that we need to know about. We need that information. But if we make it a place that she feels she can't share because of the jargon, then we're never going to hear that. We have to break down barriers. Just like Deming said, we have to break down barriers to trust, which means making people feel welcome and comfortable sharing their experience, even if they don't speak the language. So what it boils down to is that people spoke to me in concepts and solutions before they introduced tools. Because if you understand a concept or solution, you can find the tools you need. I know Deming got a lot of grief when he released Out of Crisis, because a lot of managers complained, you gave us these principles and that's great, but you didn't give us any tools. And I think he was being really, really smart about it, because he was releasing it for some pretty diverse industries. And he knew that if you could understand the principles, you'd be able to find the right tools. But if you jump, oh great, that's a nice principle, let's get a tool for it, You didn't take time to really think about what does this principle mean, what does it look like in my organization, and which tool is going to do the best for that. So what do we do as a group? What do we do as quality professionals and members of professional quality organizations? I'm going to make 5 suggestions, okay? The first thing we have to do ourselves is sit and think about the universal nature of quality principles. Just like Deming did, he didn't throw the tools out there first. We have to talk about how these are the principles. We're going to distill it down so that everyone can use them, and then we'll talk about the tools as needed. We'll fall in love with the principles, which will make us fall in love with the tools that work for us. The second we can do is eliminate jargon when it is unnecessary. When it's not helping us communicate better, ditch it. And if you can't, I used to have this quote memorized, I can't remember who said it, but if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it. If you cannot explain a quality principle without using jargon, you've stopped understanding it. You've stopped seeing it from the outside and being able to express it. And this is where a lot of those false starts happen locally, where people say we're going to implement TQM or lean, and it falls apart. It's because you bring in an expert in this process, but they don't remember how to break it down into layman's terms, because we speak it fluently. It's like me forgetting that I'm speaking Thai, which has happened before when I'm really angry. I would forget I was speaking Thai sometimes and other people couldn't understand me. We have to catch ourselves and pay attention to our audience. We know our quality stuff. We've been going through this all the time. We know we can always learn more, but we have to remember that knowing the language does not mean we know more about executing quality principles. When you start thinking about that, you start really listening to your audience. You start learning from them, which leads into the third principle for changing what's happening, is we have to reach out with respect for outsider expertise and desires. And that respect means that we listen and value the experience of outsiders. And that goes back to the idea of the novice not feeling like they can talk. We have to recognize that quality is happening off the manufacturing floor. I don't know how many of you read the ASQ president's last blog post where he talked about quality in unexpected places. I wrote about it on our blog, you can go check it out, but I love seeing people recognize quality in diverse places. The only thing that frustrated me about his article is he had some great examples, but a lot of them were about using this chart to pick which bicycle to buy. That's a quality tool being used for, yeah, buying a kid's bicycle, but is that really unexpected? If I was a quality professional, yeah, I have to make a decision, I'm going to do that. The articles I loved was one fellow talking about his homeland in South America and the bakers there and how they pass on their knowledge to each other. There's another guy talking about focusing on internal and external customers in your own family. They were recognizing the universal principles of quality. But the first paragraph was about a whole bunch of quality tools, and there was no differentiation between the two of them. We have to listen with respect to what that baker in South America is doing, because they've been doing this successfully without those tools. And if we understand those principles, we can use the tools not as a crutch or as our focus, but to really push us forward when the principles won't do anymore. If the principles aren't there as the foundation, we won't be able to move forward. And we'll learn more about that as we listen to these outsiders, and we find out how they're doing it without the tools successfully. The fourth point is getting back to the why. We have to make sure that in order to get people to buy in, you explain everything to them, how it's going to make their life faster, better, cheaper, easier, safer. That's what people want. And if we can't tell them how this quality program is going to do that for them, then either the quality program is not effective and we need to sit back and make sure we're doing the right thing, or we don't understand it well enough and we can't get their buy-in yet. It's right back to the Pareto principle. It's not their fault if we're not implementing quality properly. If they can't get buy-in, we can't blame the people who we're trying to teach. It goes back on us. We have to make sure we're explaining it in a way that they can understand and buy into, and that we're using the right tool for the right job. And the last one is kind of the hardest, but the easiest. It's a weird paradox. We all have to fall in love with quality again. You can't properly advocate for or evangelize for a subject if you aren't in love with it. Now, you have to stop and think back. Why are you here because you have a job that requires it? Are you here because you've seen quality do amazing things and you want to help other people do it? You have to remember what gets someone excited about something. Like we went to the Jewish synagogue a few weeks ago for a big community dinner they had. And there was a moment where I looked over at my sister, who, when we eat, we tend to get a little excited about what we're eating. We're not really good at containing ourselves. And what did you say, Em? I said something and she didn't hear me. And her response was,
I'm sorry, Meredith, I was communing with my brisket.
she was communing with her brisket, and she proceeded to go, oh my gosh, this is so good, it's amazing. I mean, what did that brisket taste like, Em?
It was phenomenal, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my goodness, it so tender, it just kind of fell apart in your mouth. I never tasted anything as savory as that beef brisket.
And you want to eat that beef brisket, okay? We can't walk around showing people spatulas and expecting them to get excited about food. If we can't remember why we're in love with quality, then quality professional organizations are not going to survive. We're not going to feel more than a periodic social purpose. We have to fall in love with quality. There's universal principles. No one's going to love a chart. They might love a properly executed chart that helps them communicate with someone else. They might love knowing that their life can be easier. They might like knowing that they're not alone and it's not just their gut, and they really can trust those instincts because they're proven principles. Those are the things that will make people come together. That's what will break down those barriers between us and the rest of the quality world, because it's universal. And ASQ is the perfect organization to bring everyone in under that big umbrella. We just have to get out of the engineer, manufacturing, management mindsets and recognize that those are just manifestations of larger principles. Sure, we learned it, we've used it a lot, but there's so much we're missing and that we can learn. We don't want to lose the experience that's hidden in everyone's heads right now. We want to get that out to make everyone's life easier. That's the only way we got to this point, is that each of those quality gurus built on each other. They shared their information and they kept going. We have to make sure we're sharing our information in a way that people will understand. And that is how you break down the gap. Questions?